At the wedding, the bride's father took the microphone and read out his will. And just as the groom realized what surprise awaited him, the traffic light turned red. And Liam barely managed to brake at the pedestrian crossing. His thoughts at that moment were solely on the upcoming wedding. He had no desire whatsoever for this noisy gathering of the so-called city elite. The future father-in-law was the head of a large corporation with numerous branches across the country, and he intended to marry off his only daughter in grand style. For Liam, who was born and raised in a modest family in a provincial town, such extravagant expenses were incomprehensible. But Sam, his bride-to-be, would just laugh and say, "Why are you so worried? Money comes and goes, and my father has so much of it that he could throw these parties for 500 people every day." It seemed not long ago that Liam couldn't even imagine such a life, and now he was riding in a luxurious car worth 2 years' salary of both his parents combined, dressed to the nines. His parents, of course, had tried their best to ensure that their son had everything no worse than others, but how much could they afford on the salaries of a schoolteacher and an auto mechanic? Back in school, Liam had sworn to himself that he would make something of himself and live comfortably. While classmates played ball in the yard, he toiled over textbooks day and night, resulting in graduating with honors. His parents couldn't have been prouder, and they were deeply concerned when he went off to the city for college. After easily passing the entrance exams for the economics faculty, he already envisioned himself becoming a famous banker, making his parents proud. He completed college just as he did school, summa cum laude. But it turned out that grades weren't as important as connections and acquaintances. Classmates from affluent families, barely scraping through to graduation, were almost immediately placed in prestigious positions. Meanwhile, Liam, sending out his resume everywhere he could, struggled to secure a job as an economist in a small construction firm. Everything changed the moment he met Sam. It happened completely by chance. One of his former classmates invited him to a lavish club anniversary. Liam usually didn't go to such places, beyond his means, and he didn't see anything appealing in all those dances and gatherings. But for some reason, he agreed this time. After spending a couple of hours there and congratulating the birthday celebrant, he was ready to leave when a group of girls entered the hall. Among all the beauties, there was a standout, a petite blonde resembling a porcelain figurine. Liam couldn't take his eyes off her, forgetting everything else. The group settled at a nearby table, and he resolved to somehow introduce himself to the enchanting beauty who had caught his eye. It wasn't like he had much experience with such encounters, but as a handsome guy, standing over 6 feet tall with a sporty figure, he often caught girls' attention. Waiting for a slow song to start playing, Liam invited the stranger to dance. The girl's name turned out to be Sam. They danced a few more times, and by the end of the evening he offered to see her home, to which she responded with a smile. "Well, no, I haven't taken a walk under the moonlight yet. Thank you, but my driver is waiting." The girl was already about to get into the foreign car that pulled up, but Liam decided not to give up and asked for her phone number, saying he wanted to invite her out on a date. "Well, if it's not some cheap cafe or a boring romantic movie, I might consider it." "Go ahead, maybe you'll get lucky," Sam said, laughing as she handed him her business card. To Liam, it sounded like a challenge, and he was determined to meet her again at all costs. When he called a couple of days later for the first time, she playfully and unbelievably asked, "Liam? Who's Liam again?" "Oh, right, the charming gentleman from the restaurant. Unfortunately, I'm quite busy right now. Sorry, maybe later." The girl had captured his heart, and after their first meeting, he thought about her almost every day. After waiting a couple more days, Liam called again and was surprised when Sam agreed almost immediately to meet up. It was winter, and he invited the girl to a countryside club. They were sitting in a cozy cafe when suddenly Sam looked out the window and saw skiers returning from a walk. "And do you know how to ski?" she asked with a conspiratorial tone. Liam was surprised by this question but quickly responded, "I do, and I also play chess." She smiled and said, "Well, let's come here next weekend and ski. The slopes here are awesome. My friends and I used to come here. By the way, You could show my father your skills in chess if I decide to introduce you. He thinks modern youth doesn't know anything about this game. Liam looked at Sam and couldn't believe she could be so simple and kind. On their first evening together, the girl had seemed arrogant and spoiled, like a rich girl, but now she was casually talking about their next date. Liam, of course, agreed. He wanted to be with her every second, and he already understood that he had fallen in love with this petite girl and was ready to accept any conditions from her. 2 days flew by unnoticed. They skied, which Sam turned out to be excellent at, swam in the pool, and all this time she was open, cheerful, and seemed very uncomplicated. Even after they started dating, Liam was surprised every time by how different Sam could be. Sometimes she acted like a petulant little girl, pouting over trifles, and other times she was sweet, kind, and affectionate. They were completely different. Many friends didn't believe in the sincerity of their feelings, thinking Liam was with her for her wealthy father. Once, meeting a former classmate at whose birthday party they had met, he winked, slapped Liam on the shoulder, and said, "Well done, Liam. Bravo. Didn't expect that from such a quiet guy. Heard you've hooked Sam. A real catch, I tell you. She herself is a spoiled little thing, but the dowries, they've millions. Her dad with his business is famous far beyond our region. Will you invite me to the wedding?" Liam didn't like this conversation, and cutting off his friend, he hurried to say goodbye. It was pointless to explain to him that Sam's father's wealth meant nothing to him and that he simply loved her. Besides, there was no need. Liam believed that their relationship was what mattered, and he absolutely didn't care what others thought about it. A month later, he finally decided, and, inviting Sam to a romantic dinner at a restaurant, proposed to her. It was difficult for him to decide on this because he couldn't fully understand how she really felt about him. He thought that proposing would clarify everything in their relationship. Sam didn't expect this and looked at him somewhat sadly. "You know, I really like you and I'm ready to become your wife, but you understand who my father is and I'm not sure he will approve of our marriage. I'm sorry, but my dad insists that my chosen one should be from our circle." Liam would have liked to see a different reaction, but he tried to respond calmly. "Let me try to convince him myself that he won't regret having me as his son-in-law. I'm sure I can find common ground with your father." But at the same time, Liam perfectly understood who he was, a simple guy from the countryside and who Sam's father was. But the desire to always be with her gave him strength. That same evening, she called and informed him that he was expected for dinner the next day. After impatiently waiting for the appointed time and buying 2 splendid bouquets on the way, Liam headed to the given address. Pulling up to the 3-story mansion with numerous turrets, he stood bewildered at the gate. Sam's home looked more like a castle than a typical country residence. The entire area around it was fenced off with a high fence, and above the heavy wrought iron gate, a peephole of a surveillance camera was visible. Taking a deep breath, like before a leap, Liam pressed the doorbell. In less than a minute, a tall man in a strict suit, resembling a guard, opened the door and invited him inside. Sam was already waiting at the entrance and, seeing his confusion, smiled and said, "Come in. Don't worry, my parents may be strict, but they don't bite." Liam followed her and found himself in a spacious room that resembled a living room. Huge floor-to-ceiling windows made the room bright, and all sorts of antiques like paintings and floor vases reminded him of museum halls. Sitting on one of the leather sofas was a gray-haired gentleman who was attentively studying a newspaper. Upon the guest's arrival, he stood up and, seemingly skeptically, said, "So this is your fiancé?" "Well, externally, of course, no objections. Athletic, lean, but daughter, appearances can be deceiving. Nevertheless, I think today we'll learn more about you, young man. But for now, let's go to the table. My wife is probably already waiting." Ethan John, Sam's father, immediately made it clear to Liam that he was not inclined towards such a son-in-law. He didn't do this openly, but quite understandably. "My wife and I have raised our daughter in comfort all her life, given her a good education abroad, and she's accustomed to a certain lifestyle that requires considerable means. Tell me, son, what do you do for a living?" Liam calmly replied, "I'm a junior economist, but I'll do everything to ensure Sam lacks nothing. Sam's father burst into laughter. Once he settled down, he smiled and said, "Well, I think your salary won't even cover one trip to the boutique." Millicent Grayson, Sam's mother, saved the situation. She looked reproachfully at her husband and quietly said, "Ethan, why are you teasing our guest? They're adults, they'll figure it out themselves. Let's rather have dinner." The duck turned out excellent. "Liam, don't mind him. He looks tough on the outside, but he's actually wonderful and kind, isn't he?" She looked at her husband so tenderly and affectionately that he indeed immediately changed his tone and shifted the conversation. But the conversation still didn't flow smoothly. Liam even felt like Sam's father would be happy if he simply stood up and left without saying goodbye. Suddenly, as if struck by a thought, he asked, "Tell me, is it true that you're good at chess?" Ethan John's expression changed instantly. Setting aside his utensils, he looked at Liam with a completely different, interested gaze and asked in surprise, "And do you know how to play? Tell me you do. I'd actually like to see that right now." Liam realized he had hit the mark, and now there was a real chance to win over the head of the family. "Why not? I'd be glad to. It's been a while since I've sat down at a board, though," Liam said. For over an hour they played game after game, paying no attention to the hostess' invitation to have tea and cake. After playing several rounds in a row, Liam lost only once. Ethan John clearly wanted a rematch, but Liam, checking his watch, apologized and said if there was an opportunity, he'd gladly play again another time. Sam's father looked puzzled, and as they bid farewell, unexpectedly remarked, "As for your marriage with Sam, I need to think about it, but about work. I think I can help you there. I see you're a smart, capable guy. Fools don't win at chess. Come by my office tomorrow. If you're as good in work as you are in the game, I could really use someone like you. Just yesterday, the head of one of our departments resigned, coincidentally from your field, so let's talk about it then." Liam never expected such a turn of events, but then, thinking it over, he decided that life was giving him a chance. The very next morning, after taking a leave from work, he arrived at Ethan John's office with all the necessary documents. After carefully reviewing them, Ethan took off his glasses and looked at Liam seriously. "Well done. Your academic record is excellent everywhere. I hope you won't disappoint in your work either. Go to the secretary, she knows the details, and will guide you on when and where to complete the paperwork. I don't think it'll be difficult for you to resign from your current job." Liam couldn't believe what was happening. He would be working in such a renowned company, and not just as an ordinary employee, but as a manager. Thanking him for the trust, he was about to leave the office when Ethan John called out to him, "Liam, why haven't you asked about our decision regarding the marriage? Or have you changed your mind already?" Caught up in the joy of the new job offer, Liam had completely forgotten that he hadn't received approval for his marriage to Sam. With his heart racing, he looked at Ethan John and blurted out in one breath, "No, of course not. I love your daughter very much, and I'm ready to accept any decision. That's the spirit. One should always fight to the end," Boss said sternly, then smiled and added, "But all right, forget about it. Get married. I can see you're a good lad, and now with a decent job too. Our salary is competitive, so you'll be able to spoil Sam. Just don't spoil her too much." Liam's reminiscence was interrupted by a phone call. "Where are you?" Sam's voice sounded displeased. "I've been waiting for you. We still have so much to do. 2 days until the wedding, and you're off somewhere." They agreed to meet at the restaurant where their wedding celebration was planned in a few days. However, Liam was hopelessly stuck in traffic. Sam's father had insisted on hiring professionals to organize the event and had contacted an agency, but Sam decided to double-check everything herself. Today, once again, she was reviewing the menu, making changes not for the first time. Liam, on the other hand, was simply asleep, dreaming of when this pre-wedding rush would end, so he could fully immerse himself in his new responsibilities, which he was very excited about. In the month he had worked at Ethan John's company, Liam had gotten a good grasp of things, earning praise from his boss. The last days before the wedding flew by unnoticed. Liam's parents and godparents with their son came to the celebration from the village. They all had to be accommodated in a rented apartment that Liam hadn't yet managed to vacate. The future father-in-law suggested they live together after the wedding, but Sam was categorically against it. So Ethan John hinted that separate housing would be their wedding gift. Finally, the long-awaited morning arrived when Liam and Sam were supposed to become husband and wife. The celebration was organized for 200 people, but Liam's side managed, hopefully, 15. Liam's parents nervously scrutinized the guests' attire, their modest suits not fitting the glitter and luxury of city outfits. But in the wedding bustle, no one paid much attention to the modest provincials. The hall was adorned with live flowers. A famous band played on stage from the very beginning. The tables were literally overflowing with exquisite dishes and drinks. Sam, in a long, snowy white dress with a lace train, looked extraordinary, resembling a delicate, angelic figure. From the very beginning of the festivities, a booming MC commanded the celebrations, smoothly inserting jokes and congratulations into his speech. Everyone was in a great mood. Even the groom's relatives, initially shy among the invited wealthy guests, soon began chatting easily with the family sitting nearby. Only Ethan John was lost in his clearly somber thoughts, watching everything unfold with detachment. Seizing a moment, Liam approached him and asked, "Ethan John, is something wrong? Are you not happy about our marriage? It feels like something has happened." Ethan John looked sadly at him and quietly replied, "I'll gather my thoughts and try to explain everything to everyone. Though, don't leave your daughter alone for long, or else, who knows, someone might snatch her away." Ethan John tried to smile, but it didn't quite work out for him. At that moment, Liam thought that over the month he had known his father-in-law, he had significantly disappointed him. He hadn't complained about anything, but he looked very bad. Deciding not to bother him with more questions, Liam returned to the dancing guests, where Sam beckoned him with a finger in the center of the circle. He glanced a couple more times at Ethan John, who continued to sit on the sidelines. In the midst of the evening, the MC interrupted the music and said, "Dear newlyweds, esteemed guests, please take your seats. I've been secretly informed that our bride's father has some news to announce. Ethan John, I invite you to the microphone." Liam noticed that his father-in-law was visibly nervous. With trembling hands, he grasped the microphone stand as if trying to steady himself, and, in a shaky voice, began, "My dear family, friends, colleagues, it saddens me deeply that on such a wonderful day, I must say what I have long been contemplating. I just think this is the appropriate time for everyone to know. I am very seriously ill. Even all my savings do not give me a chance at life. Unfortunately, health cannot be bought." A worried whisper spread through the hall. Sam looked frightened at Liam, but he himself couldn't understand anything. Ethan John, meanwhile, after a short pause, continued, "As much as I could, I tried to hide my illness from my loved ones. But now, as my life could end at any moment, I want to publicly announce my will so that there are no misunderstandings." He scanned the room and, locking eyes with Liam, said, "From today I officially hand over the management of my company to Liam. I know you will handle it. All the rest of my belongings, of course, go to my wife and daughter, but the firm will belong to Liam. Don't let me down, buddy." Ethan seemed to want to say something else, but staggering, he immediately fell, pulling the microphone stand with him. Real panic broke out in the hall. Someone screamed. Millie rushed to her husband, holding a glass of water in her hands. Sam seemed to be in shock and held tightly to Liam's hand. "Liam, what is this? This can't be true. Call an ambulance quickly. Dad can't just die like this." The arriving doctors immediately took Ethan to the hospital, where Millie followed and Liam with his wife. They waited outside the department for over an hour until the doctor came out and informed them that Ethan John had fallen into a coma. "I'm afraid there's nothing I can say to comfort you. It's all too advanced and most likely he won't regain consciousness. Although there's a slim chance it's possible. All we can do now is wait and hope." Millie Grayson cried all the way home while Sam tried to comfort her. Both of them were devastated that they hadn't noticed or suspected Ethan John's illness. And Liam couldn't help but think bitterly that amidst daily shopping and beauty salons, it was quite understandable. After all, lately they had only thought about new outfits, masks, spa procedures, and other nonsense. No one could have imagined that Ethan John had any problems, especially health-related. Liam didn't sleep all night. He was scared because managing such a business was no easy task and he had only just learned everything. But there was no choice. Early in the morning, while everyone was still asleep at home, he went to the office. First, he requested all the necessary documentation and instructed the secretary not to disturb him. Then he immersed himself in the paperwork. The more he delved into it, the clearer it became to him that Ethan's business was not as successful as it seemed. Perhaps it had been in the past, but recently, probably due to his illness, he hadn't paid attention to many things. Several deals were initially unsuccessful and yet were executed. By evening, Liam had a splitting headache. He realized that saving this business would require a lot of effort. At the same time, he needed to do it as quickly as possible. Otherwise, the business would simply collapse. Late in the evening, on his way home, he suddenly remembered how Ethan had once said he hoped his daughter would help him, which is why he sent her abroad to study. He decided to discuss this with his wife when he returned home. Sam was watching some romantic series and calmly replied, "Well, how are things? Do you think you can handle it? We visited Dad. There's been no change. He hasn't regained consciousness. By the way, I was planning to go shopping tomorrow to lift my spirits somehow. Dad always used to give me some money for that. I hope you won't refuse me this little favor." Liam was surprised at how calmly she could talk about it. It seemed that Sam didn't grasp the magnitude of the problems. "Tell me, after you returned from studying abroad, did you help your dad in the business at all? Can you give me any insights? Things aren't going very well there, and I need to get to the bottom of everything." "At least for now, you might have to curb your desires a bit," Liam said. Sam lowered the TV volume and replied somewhat discontentedly, "What are you talking about? I barely managed to get that diploma just to get my parents off my back. How do you imagine me in a huge construction business? I only know forests from pictures and maybe from the car window. And about my desires to go out, I'm barely asking for anything. You're my husband now, so you're obligated to support me." She turned back to the TV. "Sweetie, have dinner yourself. I really want to finish watching this." Changing into more comfortable clothes, Liam sat down to eat, thinking only about how there was no one else to ask for help and he couldn't afford to let Ethan down and let the business collapse. Something urgent needed to be done. Without finishing his meal, he headed to Ethan John's office. Knowing that he had been working late from home lately, Liam started going through the documents on the desk, trying to find any leads that could help. Most of the contracts seemed disadvantageous to the company, but fortunately, some of them were still unsigned, and Liam decided to start with those. He spent the entire next day late into the night at the office again, and representatives from several competing companies visited him throughout the day. They vividly described how Ethan John's years of hard work would crumble if Liam didn't agree to sell to them. Each of them essentially said the same thing: they could save the business by buying it for a good sum. However, Liam dismissed all these talks immediately. He didn't even entertain the thought of selling. Deep down, he believed Ethan John would recover, and together they could restore everything. Liam was glad he hadn't been lazy during his college years and had acquired the knowledge that was now proving invaluable. He managed to negotiate the revisions of the latest contracts, and in each case, he believed that with these favorable contracts, he could stabilize the company even before the previous owner recovered. From early morning until late evening, he spent his time at work, while his young wife continued to live for her own pleasure. He tried to explain to her that things were going poorly at the firm, as it seemed to her. And every ruble was hard-earned now. Her response was always the same: "You promised my dad you could provide me with a carefree life, so earn it, or should I start working?" "No way," she said, pouting with offense to show that the topic was unpleasant to her. Liam had already realized that Sam wasn't accustomed to working. She had always gotten everything in life thanks to her parents. Now, however, he found himself fulfilling her whims. Sometimes even her mother demanded attention and money, and neither of them cared at all about what was happening with the company. Their top priority was ensuring their carefree lives continued. But all of this interested Liam far less than the affairs of the company. Despite his efforts, everything he did seemed futile, and the situation hardly changed. One morning, as Liam got out of his car early at the office door, a young girl in a wheelchair was right beside him. He had seen her here several times before and had even instructed security not to eject her. She had looked at him with such gratitude that Liam's heart went out to her. Now this stranger suddenly asked to speak with him. Liam was surprised at what this beggar could want to talk to him about, but he decided to stop and listen. Wesley, as the poor girl was named, quickly and nervously began to talk about a conspiracy brewing in his company. Two men from your office, judging by their expensive cars, are not insignificant people in the company. They were discussing some contract with several well-concealed clauses. They were confident that once you sign this document, the company will immediately transfer to them. I beg you, please be careful. You are such a good person, she said firmly, calming down a bit. Listening to her, Liam already guessed who she was talking about. Indeed, only one contract was planned to be concluded in the near future. Thanking Wesley, he promised to help her for sure, not knowing how yet, but he really intended to do so. Everything Wesley said turned out to be true. Double-checking the contract he was already prepared to sign, Liam found the points she mentioned. When the confident managers arrived for negotiations, mentally setting their rules in the new business, he tore up all the documents before their eyes and said with disgust, "What were you hoping for, huh? Did you want to get such a business for a penny? There will be none of that. I know everything you planned, and I have no intention of having any dealings with you. Get out of here and let there be no spirit of yours here anymore." It was clear that they were completely unprepared for such a turn. One of them tried to say something more in his defense, but the other, abruptly interrupting him, approached his colleague and muttered through his teeth, "Tup, you will regret not accepting this offer. We will destroy you." Liam reached for the phone and, in a completely calm voice, replied, "I'm calling security. Or will you leave on your own?" Slamming the door behind them, the scammers left, and Liam slumped wearily into the chair, closing his eyes. It was clear that derailing such a deal had shocked these scoundrels, but they certainly didn't know who had helped Liam uncover their conspiracy. Remembering Wesley, he immediately stepped outside in hopes of seeing her and expressing his gratitude, but she wasn't at her usual spot. Returning to the office, he continued to think about her for a long time. There was something about her that kept coming to mind. It wasn't just pity, it was her gentle voice, big blue eyes, delicate features. All of it lingered in his thoughts. That evening, spotting her at the entrance, Liam exclaimed joyfully, "There you are. Wesley, you were right. You saved me and the business. I must thank you. To start, I invite you to have dinner at a nice little restaurant." She nervously shook her head, hesitantly saying, "No, are you serious? I haven't really done anything special, and in a restaurant, well, they definitely won't let me in looking like this." Liam sensed she wasn't entirely rejecting his offer, so he smiled, took her hand, and said, "Don't you know that clothes don't make the person? Besides, who would dare not let you in when you're with me?" They spent the evening at a cozy cafe not far from the office. It turned out they had a lot in common, and Liam found it easy to converse with Wesley. It felt like they had known each other for ages. After dinner, Liam offered to drive her home, but she firmly declined, mentioning she lived nearby and her brother would meet her. It seemed he didn't want him to see them together. Liam drove home, thinking about the evening the entire way, only to be greeted by a scandal at home. Sam demanded an explanation, shouting indignantly that she had tried calling the office but was told he had long since left. "I stood there like an idiot at the checkout, unable to pay for the purchase, just because you didn't pick up," she said. Liam tried to interrupt her. "But I transferred quite a bit to you this morning. You could have bought half the store with that." But Millie came to the rescue, snorting disapprovingly. "Half the store secondhand? Perhaps. But if you haven't noticed, we only wear branded clothes, darling, and they cost a pretty penny. By the way, my husband has always respected our desire to buy quality items." That evening, Liam had absolutely no desire to argue, so he simply walked silently into Ethan's office. But his wife didn't relent. "Don't pretend like you don't hear me. I postponed my purchases and I want them by tomorrow, so make sure to transfer me no less than what my father used to give me. Now that the company is yours, all our expenses fall entirely on you." Liam closed the door behind him and didn't hear what Sam was trying to shout. Since their wedding, not much time had passed, yet she was already turning into a real shrew. Sam certainly wasn't an angel. She had always shown her character, but now it was becoming even clearer. There was less tenderness and affection in her, and more desire to squander money that was hard to come by. Although Millie had also shown her true colors, and now Liam understood who his wife really was. During the time that had passed since their wedding, he had only heard from them a couple of times that they were at the hospital with Ethan. When he tried once to comment on the subject, Sam had indignantly stated, "And why should I keep going there every time? He's still in a coma. There's a whole team of medical personnel taking care of him." Liam did not understand this attitude toward his father. He was an outsider, yet he always tried to visit Ethan whenever it was convenient for him. Sitting by his bedside, he shared what was happening in the company, as if believing that Ethan heard everything, but his condition remained unchanged. Talking to Wesley became a relief for Liam. He tried to help her as much as he could, and after work, he often went for a walk with her in the park. They ate their favorite chocolate ice cream together and talked about completely different topics. However, there were well-wishers who sent Sam several photographs, where Liam and Wesley were walking together, in a cafe, by his car, and everywhere they were smiling happily. There was a huge scandal at home, which Liam had already gotten used to lately. "Have you gone completely crazy?" Sam screamed. "Life isn't sharp enough for you. You had to pick up a homeless cripple. What's next? Bring some infection from this tramp into our home." For the first time during this time, Liam cut his wife off fairly sharply. "Stop it. Don't you dare speak about her like that. If you had shown even a little interest in my affairs, you would know that thanks to this girl, we didn't lose your father's company. She helped, and I will help her, whether you like it or not. That's it. I have no intention of discussing this further, and I suggest you calm down." Snorting disapprovingly, Sam left the room. She didn't speak to Liam for several days, which he was even glad about. Lately, the scandals had been so frequent that sometimes he didn't want to come home, which is why he tried to spend as much time as possible in the office and enjoyed any opportunity to chat with Wesley in the evenings. In one of those evenings, Liam was pushing the wheelchair through the park, cheerfully telling Wesley about his college years. Wesley laughed heartily, but unexpectedly, they were intercepted by two guys in tracksuits. From a distance, they could pass as athletes out for a jog, but as they drew nearer, Liam immediately recognized them. Blocking their path, one of them spoke menacingly. "Well, boss, we warned you that you'd regret not signing that contract. You've ruined all our plans, so now we'll ruin your life." Liam was scared, not for himself, but for Wesley. Turning to her, he said, "Wesley, please go away. I'll handle this." But at that moment, the second thug struck him hard across the face. Stumbling from the unexpected blow, Liam fell to the side, and then it all unfolded like a scene from a movie which Liam watched from the sidelines. Several athletic, well-built men appeared out of nowhere, and within seconds subdued the thugs, pinning them to the ground. One among them called the police, and within 10 minutes, the grumbling criminals were taken away. One of Liam's rescuers approached Wesley and quietly asked something, receiving her response, "Thank you so much, but I'll be fine from here." The strangers vanished as quickly as they had appeared. Liam looked at Wesley questioningly. It was clear that the people who had saved him knew her well. She spoke hesitantly. "I'm sorry, I didn't tell you everything about myself. Do you want to know who those people were? Let's take a little walk, I'll try to explain." Wesley explained that she was not from a poor family at all. Her father was a well-known businessman, and the unexpected interveners were her bodyguards. "I don't understand," Liam said in surprise. "Then why do you beg near my office?" Wesley sadly smiled and continued, "Notice, I'm not asking for money. I just sit there, watching people from my wheelchair, and people themselves bring me things. It's like entertainment for me. Being stuck at home, I'd go crazy. For someone like me who was always active, being confined to this machine is a big tragedy. I used to be into sports, then I switched to mountain climbing. My ex-boyfriend was into that. She paused, as if recalling something unpleasant, frowned, and resumed speaking. He turned out to be quite the scoundrel. He courted me so nicely, showered me with gifts, but when I fell during one of the climbs, and it became known that I'd be disabled due to a spine injury, he disappeared instantly. Stopping the wheelchair, she looked Liam in the eyes and said softly, "Don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining. I just felt like telling you this. You know, when all this happened to me and that scoundrel left, I thought I'd lose my mind. Of course, my parents surrounded me with care. My college friends didn't abandon me, but still, the thought of facing a completely different life made me want to scream. Then suddenly I thought, there are people who probably have it even harder. So I found a new occupation for myself. I go out on the street and watch people, their lives, their concerns. Their office turned out to be accidentally convenient. There's a store nearby, and as it turned out, there was also plenty to observe at your company. I only found out about the security recently. Apparently my father had them keep an eye on me discreetly. At first I was strongly against it, but today I'm even glad they were nearby." She smiled, and Liam understood that he would do a lot to see her smile. At that moment he realized that Wesley and Sam both came from wealthy families. But Wesley was completely different, unspoiled, open, and very tender. She seemed like a fragile flower to him, one he wanted to protect from any hardships. "But I don't understand," Liam began, taking her hand. "Why then can't your parents pay for your surgery? Surely they could get you back on your feet." Her eyes filled with tears. "We looked into it. The surgery can be done, but the doctors give no chance of recovery. Moreover, they say the outcome could be even worse. I could end up completely paralyzed. And then I'll spend the rest of my life like a vegetable, bedridden. It would be equivalent to death. So I'd rather it stay this way." After what happened that evening, their relationship became warmer. Liam couldn't imagine a day without seeing Wesley. Even the scandals at home with his wife and mother-in-law seemed trivial to him now. He knew that the next day he would see Wesley's smiling face again. Moreover, they were now united by their common desire to help and rescue Ethan John's company from its debtors. Wesley turned out to be an excellent financier, having graduated from one of the renowned international academies, and she volunteered to help him. Together, they reviewed many aspects of the company's operations, and Wesley suggested more advantageous deal structures. In just a month, thanks to her help, Liam managed to rid the company of almost all competitors and secure several lucrative long-term contracts. But all this was not the main thing for him. The most important thing now was that he knew he was truly in love with this smart, kind, and very tender girl. Day and night his thoughts were occupied only with Wesley. His wife, of course, noticed the changes in his mood. For several days he was surprised by the absence of scandals at home, but this time it happened right in the office. Sam burst into his office like a fury just at the moment when he and Wesley were enthusiastically discussing a new business proposal. "This is unbelievable," his wife screamed hysterically. "To bring some beggar into my father's office. What is this homeless woman doing here? I'll call security right now and they'll throw her out onto the street, and right after, you'll follow. I'll take away your father's company from you, and then we'll divorce." Wesley looked at Liam fearfully, but he, placing his hand on hers, said softly, "Don't worry, I'll handle everything." He immediately approached his wife and, speaking clearly and sharply, explained each word. "Listen, you're going to leave here right now, or else security will escort you out. You're the only person here who has no connection to the company's work. Wesley is a full-time employee from today, just so you know. By the way, as for the company, it wasn't you who inherited it, so it's not yours to take away. I think we have nothing more to discuss. And as for divorce, I believe that's what awaits us. From today, I won't be coming home. I'm tired of these scandals. I'll live in a rented place for now, and we'll see what happens next." Seeing that her husband was determined, Sam glared angrily at Wesley and hissed as she reached the door, "You'll regret this." But Liam just smiled at her threats. He knew his wife too well. All she could do was create a scandal or throw a fit. She was incapable of anything more. So he calmly addressed Wesley. "Don't worry about it. You have nothing to do with this. She'll find any reason to cause a scene, but I'm truly tired of this life. Anyway, where were we? Let's get back to work. I didn't lie, and if you're okay with it, I'm ready to officially hire you starting today. After all, you've helped me tremendously in pulling the company out of crisis." The next day, when Liam came to visit Ethan as usual to share the successes, he was met with a pleasant surprise. The attending physician informed him that Ethan John had come out of the coma, and now there was real hope for his recovery. Liam pleaded to be allowed into the room for just a moment. The first thing Ethan weakly said when he saw him was, "Thank you, my dear. I knew I could trust you. You're a real hero. I know everything." Liam didn't ask how he knew, but in that moment he believed that even in a coma, people could hear when they were spoken to. He visited every day, and on one of those days in the hospital room, he encountered Sam. Without even saying hello, she announced in front of her father, "Ah, it's good you showed up. I'm filing for divorce today, and you can take your stuff from the house so I don't have to see you anymore. Go live with your invalid. You'll be beggars together on the street." Ethan John, who already knew about Wesley and the invaluable help she had provided to their company, suddenly sat up sharply in bed and, controlling his anger, said, "I'm ashamed that I raised such a daughter, though I'm to blame myself. You're rude, spoiled, and maybe it's time you finally learn to live within your means, to value people, and to earn money on your own. From today, I'm freezing all your accounts. I'll leave you with just one card with a minimal limit. Tomorrow, I'll arrange tickets for you to our most distant branch. You'll start your working life there as a regular manager, and we'll see how it goes. Don't count on my help. That's all. Go. I need some rest, and pack your things for the trip." Liam saw that his father-in-law's words shocked Sam. She tried to explain something to him, but Ethan lay back on the bed and closed his eyes, indicating that the conversation was over. Once she left the room, Liam intended to do the same, letting Ethan John rest. But he quietly said, "Liam, wait please. I now understand that you and my daughter are very different. But now, it's not you who isn't suitable for her, but she's not suitable for you. I fully support you if you decide to divorce." Liam was very grateful for the support, both in life and in his profession. Surprisingly, Ethan John recovered quite briskly according to the doctors, and soon joyfully returned to the office. At first, he didn't want to do it. "Oh, I can't. I left it to you, and now what? Take it back, especially since everything is going so well for you. You've taken the company to a whole new level." But Liam persisted. "No, this is your creation, and only you can truly manage all of this machinery. Besides, I'm divorced now and no longer your relative or heir." Ethan John agreed, but with one condition: Liam would remain his right-hand man and deputy. He argued that combining Liam's experience with his own knowledge would accelerate the company's development even further. Liam agreed and was happy to continue his beloved work under the guidance of such an experienced boss. Ethan turned out to be knowledgeable, smart, and made every effort to teach Liam as much as possible. One day, during lunch break, Ethan John noticed how Liam was tenderly caring for Wesley, and took the opportunity to say quietly, "You know, besides being a wonderful professional, she's a very charming girl, and you two suit each other very well. Yes, don't look at me like that. I can see it from my age, but we should get her back on her feet. I have a very good friend, a truly gifted doctor in a neighboring city. People come to him from all over the country for help. Let me give him a call. You should visit him with your beauty." When Liam told Wesley about this, she initially resisted, saying that nothing and no one could help her anymore. But he insisted. "Just for you, because you promised to dance with me once you're up and about," Liam smiled. For 2 days, she underwent examinations, with all the necessary tests and analyses done. Afterward, the doctor confirmed that she absolutely needed surgery. He confidently stated, "You have good chances of walking again. Of course, as with any procedure, there are risks, but they are minimal compared to the anticipated recovery." On the day of the surgery, Liam was more nervous than Wesley herself, though he didn't show it. Kissing her hands, he said, "I love you very much, and I will never leave you, no matter what happens. Whatever the outcome, I'll always be by your side. I know, and I love you too. That's exactly why I agreed to the surgery and really hope that someday I'll be able to walk. Wesley quietly replied, looking tenderly at Liam. The operation ended very successfully. Doctors said that Wesley's young, athletic body should recover quickly, but rehabilitation would take time. Liam was ready to drive her to the gym every day, where prescribed exercises awaited her. However, he couldn't always stay until the end of her sessions. Sometimes he would call a taxi for her to return home, always calling to check in once she got back. One day, he eagerly awaited Wesley's call to pick her up and grabbed his phone, only to see an unfamiliar number. A woman's voice on the other end said, "Hello, Liam. This is the gym administrator. Wesley asked me to call you. She was just taken away in an ambulance. It's unclear how this happened." She fell down the stairs. Upon learning which hospital she was taken to, Liam rushed there immediately. Wesley was conscious but had a severe concussion and multiple bruises. Seeing him, the doctor said despondently, "Here we were. The surgery was so successful. The progress in rehabilitation was evident, and now this. Now I don't even know what to say. Complications are possible, and Wesley may end up disabled for life. We will do everything we can, but we can't give any guarantees." Liam asked him not to mention this to Wesley, fearing it would discourage her from fighting, but he still believed in her. Quietly entering the room, Liam saw her pale face and hesitated, unsure of what to say. Hearing a noise, Wesley opened her eyes and through tears quietly said, "Forgive me, it's not my fault. I don't know how it happened, but it felt like someone pushed me from behind when I was coming down the stairs outside the club, so maybe it was just my imagination and I just slipped badly. It seems fate doesn't want us to dance together. What are you saying, darling?" Liam sat on the edge of the bed and said, "We will definitely dance as soon as you recover, and it will be our wedding waltz. We just need to endure a little longer, and everything will be fine." Later that day, after leaving the hospital, Liam went to the sports club where Wesley trained. Her words were still on his mind, and he decided to check everything. In the supermarket opposite, there were security cameras, and on reviewing the footage, he saw a woman appearing behind Wesley and indeed pushing her in the back. As they zoomed in, he had no doubt left. It was Sam. Calling Ethan John, he told him what had happened, and he immediately decided to go to the clinic. "I must apologize to Wesley for my daughter's actions, and perhaps I can help with medications or treatment costs. I want to do this, and I'll deal with my daughter myself." Liam didn't try to dissuade him. When Ethan John arrived later, Liam found him with tears in his eyes by Wesley's bedside. "Liam," he began through tears, "you can't imagine what happened. This is my daughter. See, we have identical birthmarks on our shoulders. I'm sure Wesley is my daughter." After conducting a DNA test, they learned within a few days that hospital tags had been accidentally switched many years ago in a private maternity ward. Both Millie Grayson and Ethan John had been raising completely different children all these years. The only consolation was that both girls had not lacked attention and love, growing up in very affluent families. Liam heard nothing more about Sam. He tried to ask Ethan, who only grummaged and said, "You know, when she found out about the mix-up with the girls, she left for the wilderness before we could involve the police, and there's been no sign of her since. I only know she's had trouble with her job and didn't get along with her colleagues. Forget about her. You're getting married yourself soon. That's how life goes. It's been almost a year and a half since your divorce. Look at how quickly Wesley got back on her feet, thanks to your love. Even the doctors are amazed." Liam truly felt like the happiest person in the world. After nearly a year of treatment and recovery, Wesley was feeling great and walking independently. When he proposed, she agreed without hesitation. "How could I refuse when I want our little one to have a complete family with loving parents?" she said. At their wedding, guests witnessed for the first time a bride with 2 fathers and 2 mothers, but that was their reality. A year later, in their country home, the young couple were surrounded by 3 grandfathers and 3 grandmothers passing around their wonderful twins. Liam whispered to his beloved, "With this many parents, we could confidently head to the maternity ward for our daughter, especially since mine mentioned they found a house nearby." Looking lovingly at her husband, Wesley replied, "Why not? I'm with you all the way, and there's no better dad for our children." They embraced, looking at their parents, and were incredibly happy.